Today, we are diving into one of philosophy's most intimidating books, Friedrich Nietzsche's Beyond Good and Evil. This isn't just a book, it's a declaration of war on pretty much 2,000 years of Western thought. So let's break down what that really means.
Okay, so let's just jump right in with the book's opening shot. I mean, right from the preface, Nietzsche isn't just, disagreeing with a few minor points. No, he's claiming that the entire foundation of Western philosophy, this whole quest for an objective capital T truth, a universal capital G good, is a huge, colossal mistake. A mistake that's lasted for millennia, and it all started, he says, with Plato.
That right there is the central question, isn't it? If Nietzsche is just taking a sledgehammer to these foundational pillars of truth and morality, what on earth is left? This is not just some dusty, abstract academic debate. He's arguing that this single philosophical error has literally shaped everything. Our entire culture, our values, even the way we think about ourselves as individuals. And it's been doing that for thousands of years. He basically saw this whole thing as a kind of sickness, right? A dogmatism that got its start with Plato's idea of this perfect, unseen world of forms. And then, he says, it found its most powerful, most popular form in the moral framework of religion.
The idea is that these really complex philosophical ideas about a true world get boiled down, simplified and packaged into a moral system that's, easier for the masses to swallow and follow. It's the same fundamental error, he says, just with different marketing. So here's where it gets really interesting, because Nietzsche doesn't just argue with the ideas themselves. No, he takes it a step further. He basically puts the philosophers on the psychoanalyst's couch. He plays psychologist with them.
Think about the sheer audacity of this claim for a second. What Nietzsche is saying here is that these huge, grand, logical systems of thought, they're not objective at all. He's arguing they're actually just deeply personal confessions. They're like involuntary memoirs, revealing the philosopher's own hidden biases, their fears, and ultimately what they wish the world was like.
So the takeaway here is crucial. When we look at a philosophy, we need to ask, what morality is this really aiming for? Because that so-called drive for knowledge, Nietzsche says it's usually just a mask. And underneath that mask is something much more powerful. A drive to impose a specific moral vision onto everyone else. And you have to understand, he knew his ideas were dangerous. They were demanding. He absolutely was not writing for everybody. He was writing for this very specific, ideal reader, what he calls a monster of courage and curiosity. Someone who was actually strong enough to follow him into the abyss. And, well, this number says it all, really. 114. That is how many copies of Beyond Good and Evil sold in its first year. Just think about that. It really drives home his profound isolation. He really was writing for a future that he had no idea would ever even come.
So, if objective truth is a lie, what's the alternative? Well, this is it. It's called Perspectivism. For Nietzsche, there's no such thing as a God's eye view of the world. There's no view from nowhere. There are only interpretations, only perspectives. And every single one is shaped by our own unique histories, our drives, and our values.
Okay, so Nietzsche has just torn down 2,000 years of philosophy. The big question is, what does he put in its place? What's his own foundational principle for how reality works? Will to power. Two simple words, but for Nietzsche, this is the answer to, well, everything. It's what drives it all. Not just us humans, but every single living thing. It is the fundamental engine of existence. Now, we have to be really clear about what this means. This isn't just about political domination, okay? It's not about being a tyrant. It's something much more fundamental, almost cosmic. Think about it. It's the tree's roots cracking through concrete. It's the artist imposing their vision onto a blank canvas. It's even the philosopher trying to shape the world with an idea. At its core, it's the drive for everything to become more than it is. So what Nietzsche is painting is a picture of reality where every single living thing is in this constant struggle to expand, to overcome. And this is the key part. The struggle isn't good or evil. It just is. It's simply the definition of being alive. It's as fundamental to life as, say, metabolism. To him, promising a future society without this so-called exploitative character is like promising a life without breathing. It's absurd. He argues this drive to overpower and grow is the primal fact of all history, and any philosophy that denies it,
well, that's just a sign of weakness, a denial of what life actually is. Okay, so if the world is really driven by this chaotic, amoral will to power, and not by some grand divine plan or a universal moral law, what does that mean for our values? Where do they come from? And even more importantly, what does that mean for the future of humanity? Well, Nietzsche takes a hard look at the morality of his time, what we might today call Christian morality or democratic morality. And he does not mince words. He calls it a herd morality. He saw it as a system designed for the collective, for the group, that champions values like pity, safety, and equality. And in his view, all of this just leads to one thing: mediocrity, the leveling down, the diminution of humanity. And he contrasts this herd morality with something he calls noble morality. Now, for the noble type, the question isn't, is this action good or evil? The question is this strong or weak? Their values flow from an affirmation of their own power. They are creators of values. They don't just follow someone else's. And the key idea here is what he calls the pathos of distance. It's this deep, ingrained feeling of superiority that the noble individual has, and they act from that place. In a world without God, without objective truth, values can't be discovered. They have to be created. And so Nietzsche calls for a completely new kind of philosopher. Not some academic in an ivory tower just interpreting the past, but a commander, a legislator. And this quote really describes his ultimate ideal. This is the highest form of that noble type, a figure of incredible strength, but also incredible solitude. Someone who stands alone, who embraces being different, and who lives by laws they created for themselves. This is the person who is truly beyond good and evil. But, and this is so important, he doesn't just leave us with that heroic image. He gives us this chilling warning. Nietzsche knew exactly how dangerous this path was. And when you stare for a long time into the abyss of a world without meaning, well, that abyss starts to stare back into you. And that right there is the question his dangerous idea leaves us with. It was an absolutely radical question back in the 19th century, but you could argue it hangs over us even more powerfully today. In a world without universal truths, full of competing perspectives, all driven by this will to power, who decides what our values are? Who gets to say what is good? And I guess the final question for us is, which one are we? Are we the herd? Are we the monster? Or are we the philosophers of the future that Nietzsche was waiting for?